the Canadian side and the American side. It's eroded back quite a ways just since Charles Lyell's time. The textbook says this gorge that the river runs in, is 7.5 miles long. A simple calculation shows it's been 9,900 years. Oh, it's not that simple. See, Niagara Falls is right here. It started off further north up by Lewiston. If the Earth is millions of years old, why hasn't it eroded back to Lake Erie by now? Why is Niagara Falls right there? I have a theory about that, okay? Now here's my theory. You see, about 6,000 years ago, God made everything, and 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. As the flood water was running off, whoosh, about half of that creek washed out in 20 minutes. So it looks like it took 9,900 years. They forgot the flood. They also forgot to get the right number. It should have been 8,400 had they used 4.7, but you know, what do you expect? Okay. When it rains, 30% of the water runs into the ocean, bringing with it mineral salts. The oceans are getting saltier every day. Today, they're 3.6% salt. They could have done that in less than 5,000 years. Question, why aren't the oceans saltier? Well, you see, 6,000 years ago, God made everything. 4,400 years ago, there's a flood. Now, since the flood's been over, the oceans have gradually gotten saltier. One atheist I debated said, Hovind, would you please tell me how the freshwater fish survived the flood? I said, sir, aren't you assuming the flood was salt water? He said, the ocean is salt water. I said, well, it is today, yeah. During the flood, it's probably mostly fresh water. And it's gradually gotten saltier, and today some animals have had to adapt to salt water. And now we have freshwater crocodiles and saltwater crocodiles, and they probably had a common ancestor, a crocodile. He said, that's evolution. I said, no, it's not. Going from a freshwater croc to a saltwater croc is a minor change compared to your evolution story. You believe they changed from a rock to a croc. Now, that's a major change, okay? A friend of mine in Alabama raises fish. He said he took a freshwater fish, black mollies, slowly added salt to their aquarium. In 2 weeks, they became saltwater fish. When he put them back in freshwater, they died in 30 minutes. They can adapt to salt water, not a problem. How many have ever gone into a cave and the guide said, don't touch the formations. They take millions of years to form. They all got the same speech, right? You go over here to, what's the one in Kentucky? Mammoth Cave? Or go to Carlsbad Caverns, and they say it took 250 million years. They did a study on these stalactites, and one guy said, you know, the fastest they can grow is 2.5 inches per 1,000 years. That's the maximum growth rate. I don't think so. Here are some 50-inch stalactites growing under the Lincoln Memorial. They did that in 40 years. There's a bat covered up with flowstone before it could even rot. There's 2-inch stalactites growing off a refrigeration shed in Pensacola, Florida. There's a guy in a building in Indiana built just 40 years ago, has huge cave formations in the basement of the building from water leaking through the limestone. There's a mine was shut down in Australia for 55 years. When they opened it back up to check it out, there were huge cave formations in 55 years. There's a pipe that was dripping water for 7 years, made a 13-inch stalactite. I thought it was 2.5 inches per 1,000 years. It's more like 2 inches per year. They broke off the stalagmite that was under it and gave it to me. It's in my museum. There's a parking garage built in 1997 in Texas. It was making stalagmites on the students' cars parking under it. They had to put up a drip pan to catch the water. A guy in Wyoming had a hot mineral spring on his property in Thermopolis, Wyoming. So he stuck a pipe in the ground. The water came out the top of the pipe and bubbled out the side of the top of the pipe, you know. But it had a little fountain. They called it the teepee fountain. Well, the guy died. They left the pipe sticking in the yard. As the pipe was there, it left behind mineral deposits as the water evaporated. How many have seen these mineral deposits? You get them on your sink up here? Okay. The guy died, and about 95 years after he died, after the pipe was stuck in the ground, I went to see it. Here it is, back in 1998. That would take some lime away to scrub that thing clean, don't you think? Yeah, a little bit. The guy down the street started his later. It's not quite as big, you know. But, you know, at the current rate of erosion, the continents will erode flat in 14 million years. Why do they tell us we've got fossils that are 300 times older than that, still above sea level? They should have washed out to sea 300 times. All you got to do is fly out west and look at the erosion patterns and say, man, this place was destroyed by a flood. I mean, the whole world was destroyed by a flood. Just fly around like I do and look out the window once in a while. The oldest languages in the world are kind of interesting. Origin of major writing systems from National Geographic. What do they say? Well, they say the oldest writing systems in the world started about 3000 BC. 5,000 years ago. Oldest writing systems. And the oldest languages are modern, sophisticated, and complete. The Chinese said the year 2000 was the year 4700. They think they started their calendar with the flood. They called Noah Fuhai. The oldest recorded capital punishment, 3,800 years ago. The Hebrew calendar said the year 2000 was 5760. We know the Hebrew calendar is messed up because a rabbi purposely took some years out to make it not match the prophecy to fit Jesus. The Saxons had a genealogy going back to Adam. The Danes and Norwegians had a king list going back to Noah. Don't trust the Egyptian king list. That is greatly exaggerated. See the work by Corville on that and Evolution Cruncher. Why are the oldest reliable historical records less than 6,000 years old? Well, I have a theory about that. I bet you know what it is, don't you? Yeah. That Bible is absolutely right, folks. Absolutely correct, scientifically. The evidence for a young earth is overwhelming. The students aren't taught that. Students are only shown the evidence for an old earth. Remember the coins in the box? They better deal with the youngest ones, not the oldest ones. These books aren't really science books anymore. They're books about evolution. I think it's part of a much bigger picture for a new world order. See, the guys that started this country said, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain rights. Like, do you have the right to have a church, or does the government create churches? It's the difference between 501c3 and 508c1a. You better study that out. You have the right to get married, or does the government give the right to get married? It's the difference between a marriage license and a marriage covenant. Big difference. Better study that out. But did you know 75% of kids from Christian homes who go to public schools will reject the Christian faith after 1 year of college? That's what happened to Crawford Toy. Most people have never heard of Crawford Toy, but he was a very famous Southern Baptist seminary professor. He almost married a girl named Lottie Moon. Has anybody ever heard of Lottie Moon? You know, you guys have the Lottie Moon offering every Christmas. She was a great missionary to China. Crawford Toy, after the Civil War, went to Europe and learned about evolution. And he sucked it in and believed it. He became an evolutionist. Crawford came back to his Bible class and said, you know, the Bible intends to teach a plain six-day creation. The Bible is simply in error at that point. The Bible's in error. Now, Crawford, hold on. Maybe your theory's in error. Maybe you got brainwashed. It's very easy to get brainwashed. I'm going to try to brainwash the whole crowd, and then we're going to quit and go home. And tomorrow we'll talk about the Garden of Eden. What was that like? Why did they live to be 900? But first I want to try to brainwash everybody. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you a little story. As I tell the story, I will brainwash you. Maybe you've never been brainwashed before. It's a harmless procedure. Don't worry about it, okay? When I'm done telling the story, I will ask you two simple questions about the story. If you know the answer, I just want you to raise your hand, okay? If you don't know the answer, it will be because you have been successfully brainwashed. Now pay attention. Here goes the story. Once upon a time, a man left home jogging. He jogged a little ways and turned left. He jogged a little ways and turned left. He jogged a little ways and turned left and jogged back home. As he was jogging home, he noticed two masked men waiting for him at home. Who were the masked men, and why did he leave home jogging? If you know, raise your hand, but don't say it out loud. There's about 5 or 6. Ooh, okay, the rest of you, pay attention. We're going to try it again, okay? Once upon a time, a man left home jogging. He jogged a little ways and turned left. I'll give you a hint. That's important. He jogged a little ways and turned left. He jogged a little ways, turned left, and jogged back home. As he was jogging home, he noticed two masked men waiting for him at home. Who were the masked men, and why did he leave home jogging? Anybody new figured out? 2 more. Okay. The rest of you? Pay attention. We're going to try it one more time. But now I'm going to unbrainwash